Something happens to you when you leave this town. The farther away, the hazier it all gets. But me, I never left. I remember all of it.
27 years. I dreamt of you. I craved you. I missed you.
Boo. I am Pennywise. Watch as I lick your glass. Content warning. This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Trigger warning for the death and abuse of children. Spoiler warning for all things it. And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. Follow the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Ryan is at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for links to our Facebook group and Discord server. Enjoy our horror gaming content on YouTube. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. Finally, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.
Welcome to the Horror of Babylon, where we are discussing It, Chapter 2 from 2019. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Bit of a disclaimer before we get on this. We're both pretty critical of this movie, and unfortunately we've spent a lot of time of our previous It episodes, I don't want to say bashing, but...
We've been bashing it. It's fine. That's what it is.
We're very critical.
Yeah.
When I sat down to watch this yesterday, I said, okay, I'm going to actively try to view this movie under a more positive light. I'm going to try and detach myself from it emotionally a little bit so that I can be a little more analytical, which I was successful in doing that. Spoiler alert, it didn't really make me like the movie anymore.
I think that's part of the problem, is I also think that this is, objectively is not the right word, but in my opinion, it's still not that great of a made movie.
Yeah. I don't think I'd be crazy about it even if I hadn't read the book. I'm sure I would like it more if I hadn't
When
read
I watched it this time, I was sitting there watching it, because I know fans of this movie. They exist.
Yeah.
And I wish I could see what they see, because I don't... Despite popular belief, I do not go into things wanting to hate them.
Right.
I just seem to hate a lot of things.
I often, recently, have gone into movies kind of expecting to dislike them, and not like, okay, so The Batman. I kind of really expected to dislike it. I didn't really have any particular reason why. I didn't absolutely adore it like some people did, but I definitely enjoyed it.
And we were kind of critical of that movie, at least when you compare us to everyone else coming out at the time.
Yeah. I also went into Jurassic World Dominion with very low expectations, and I didn't love it. I thought it was a little better than Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but I kind of went in expecting to just poo-poo all over it, and I didn't. I thought it was better than my expectations.
These days, I just try to remember that there are fans of things, so just because I don't like it doesn't mean that there's not a fan out there.
Yeah, and Star Wars is like the best example of that.
I remember whenever I went to see... What was the last Star Wars movie?
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. I went to go see Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
Little girl dressed as Rey.
Aww.
And I made this post after I saw the movie, and I was like, I want to talk about how much I hate this movie and how the franchise just really isn't for me anymore. But then I see this little girl dressed as Rey, and I realize not all of these movies need to be made for me, and that's okay. And then that was my review.
I think people are coming to terms with that because, you know, when the prequels came out and, you know, the age with the voice, you know, at that time were like our parents' generation. Mm-hmm. And it was all like, oh my God, these are terrible. We hate them, blah, blah, blah. They're so bad. And because of that, actors involved with that project, like Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman, distanced themselves from the Star Wars community.
Did you hear that Taika Waititi asked Natalie Portman if she wanted to be
in a Star Wars movie? She's like, I've been in 3. She still is. Yeah. But
no, I'm just saying, that just reminded me of that.
But there's this really great interview with Ewan McGregor where he just said he wanted to come back to Star Wars because the people who were kids when the prequel movies were coming out mm-hmm. are adults now, and they're voicing their love for those movies, and it really made him feel appreciated and made him want to get back to it, and that's kind of where the road to Obi-Wan Kenobi began.
That's neat.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's our preface for saying that we might be a little low energy and a little critical.
Yeah. Though I do feel like I got something out of trying to take a step back and view this movie. Still didn't like it, but I feel like I noticed some things and understand some things a little better.
Because you saw my notes.
And your notes look like tweets from a 12-year-old. Fucking stupid.
I do shorthand.
Yeah.
But I think if you go through them, you can see the exact moment I checked out.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, let's get into this. Let's talk about a little bit of our history with the movie. So, what was your first time seeing it, and how many times have you seen it, and so forth?
I saw it when it came out. I don't think I saw it opening night, but I saw it opening weekend. Because I thought the first one was good.
Yeah.
I was hopeful for the second one. I was like, well, okay, they say they don't want to do the giant spider the same way, so maybe we'll get something cool.
Yeah.
And there's good potential for scares. I'm wondering how they're going to be doing like the lack of memory and stuff because of the way the movie's structured. I was like, I went in going, there's so much potential, let's see what happens, and I walked out literally mad.
Yeah.
I felt like I had wasted my evening and my money.
I saw it opening night, and I didn't see it again until last year. I rewatched it last summer after I reread the book. And prior to both of those viewings, I made accommodations to try and make myself like it more. So before the movie came out in theaters, I did not reread the book. I was like, oh, I should reread the book. I'm like, no. I think I'm going to enjoy this movie more if I don't reread the book.
If you go in.
And then last summer, I reread the book. My normal pattern would be read the book, watch the miniseries, watch both movies. But I said, no, I'm going to reread the book. I'm not going to watch the miniseries. I'm just going to watch the 2 new movies, so I'm not comparing them to the miniseries as much. With both of those conditions, I still had really poor experiences watching this movie. I would say this third time watching it these past 2 days was maybe a little better, but still not great.
I have a story that I'll need you to remind me to tell, because I got in a YouTube comment section argument about this movie involving the final form of Pennywise.
So, hold on, I'll make a note under Pennywise.
And it stuck with me this whole time, because now a person was insisting that something was in the book that wasn't, and I had just read the book and just saw these movies.
I can see getting confused, though, because we've just gone through all of it, and I'm still, like, blurring the 4 together.
I can see getting confused, but when I bring it up, I think you'll go, no, that definitely was not in the book.
Yeah, and generally before I make a post or a comment on something, if I'm not sure, I Google it and double-check myself.
I literally pulled out my copy of the book during that argument and started typing sections.
The vampire's a pure myth. Superstition. I may be able to bring you proof. that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
Andy Muschietti returns as the director, and for a writer, Gary Dauberman, who is one of the 3 writers for Chapter 1, returns writing it. I read this on Wikipedia, but I could not verify it anywhere else, so this may be incorrect.
Grain of salt.
The Wikipedia page that says that Dauberman stopped writing it partway through, and the script was finished by Jason Fuchs.
That's how you pronounce that?
F-U-C-H. It's not Fuchs.
What does Jason do? He fucks.
He wrote Wonder Woman and Ice Age Continental Drift.
Well, I like one of those movies.
Yeah. I haven't seen Continental Drift, but
I have watched it at work. So
I saw the first 3 Ice Ages, and then my kids kind of grew out of it, and I was like, okay, that's fine. But anyway, but I could not verify this anywhere. He's not credited anywhere. He's not on the IMDb page, not in the actual credits, so that may not be true. But I would not be surprised if this film had 2 writers, one of which dropping it partway through and then somebody else trying to finish it up for them. It wouldn't shock me at all. This film had $79 million budget. It grossed $473.1 million, so almost $500 million. Which, regardless of our feelings of the movie, that's great. It's good to see Stephen King adaptations taking in money, because that means there will be more of them.
yeah, but it also might mean there's more of this quality.
I mean, Pet Sematary, Firestarter. Yeah. I'm happy with these bad movies as existing, because maybe 1 or 2 people will see the movie and then read the book.
If at least one person reads the book because of this movie, I'll call it a success.
It was released September 6th in 2019, which I remember thinking at the time, like, why aren't they waiting a month and releasing this in October? But I don't remember. Maybe there were a lot of horror movies coming out that October, so maybe...
What was this, 2019?
Yeah.
Is that when Joker came out?
Maybe. October 4th, 2019.
So yeah, of course, people expected Joker to drastically underperform, and it ended up making $1 billion. And it's also another WB movie, so they don't want to compete against themselves.
So these movies came out in October 2019. Joker, Lucy in the Sky, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, Ad Astra, Gemini Man, Jexy, Abominable, and The Lighthouse. I don't know if all of these did. But, I mean, I don't see a lot of horror movies here, so probably, I mean, maybe they just released it in September because there were a lot of movies coming out.
And some of them...
And also, Joker is also Warner Brothers.
Yeah, also Warner Brothers, so...
They probably didn't want
to compete against themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. I probably would have flipped them, though, and had Joker in September and it in October, but I'm sure it's not that easy. I'm sure there's more to it than that. Mm-hmm. This movie was in development as early as 2016. In July of 2017, Muschietti revealed that production was set to begin in the spring of 2018. In September of 2017, New Line Cinema announced the sequel would release in September 2019. It was filmed summer of 2018 in Toronto, and it was nominated for 4 Saturn Awards. It was nominated for Best Horror Film, Best Supporting Actor, Best Makeup, and Best Special Effects. The only one it won was Best Supporting Actor for Bill Hader, who played Richie. So let's go ahead and jump into structure and themes. In this, we can finally kind of wrap up the conversation we started on our It Chapter 1 episode about how I think maybe on paper, when they were pitching this to some executives, it maybe sounded good to break up the story of the adults and the kids, but looking back at it, I don't think it really worked at all.
I don't think it comes close to working.
So the structure of this movie is pretty similar to the second half of the book. Mm-hmm. It's mostly the adults, has some flashbacks with the kids, not nearly as much as the book does. The phone calls from the beginning and Stan's suicide are moved forward into this part of the story, and the kids confrontation with Pennywise is moved to the first half of the story, but otherwise it kind of does the same structure where the losers come to Derry, they have their reunion, they take their walkabouts, Henry Bowers attacks them, then they have their confrontation with Pennywise.
Yeah.
What I've been thinking about this over the past couple days, and to me, I think the fundamental flaw of these two movies is that both It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 have their issues and their good points, but It Chapter 1 to me is the better movie and is more palatable because even though it has some issues, it has the chemistry of the kids to fall back on.
It has the chemistry to fall back on. If it didn't do well, you could even call it a bookend.
Right. But this one, some of the I like some of these adults and I don't like some of these adults, but
I think it was about 50-50.
But regardless of that, their chemistry was nowhere near what the kids had.
I'm a little bit more critical than you. I would say there was like two characters with chemistry. And, and it wasn't the two that they needed to have chemistry with.
But, I mean, that's kind of the issue. Like, if this movie was more split evenly between the kids and the adults, let's say they directly adapted the book and had both showdowns with Pennywise in the second movie, so you're bouncing forth between the kids.
I think that would have worked way better.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't great, you still could be entertained by the kids, because even parts of the first movie where I'm mad, those kids are just so damn talented, I can't really be that mad.
And they tried to do that a little in this movie by making new flashbacks to stuff that didn't happen in the first movie, because I mean, you could always say, oh, no, that happened off screen. I was like, oh, that was a pretty tightly contained series of events.
And here's a good place. I just need to find where I put it in the notes because I didn't put it here. Okay, so something that bothered me a lot about this movie is walking back of things that weren't included in It Chapter 1 but were iconic in the book, and they realized when they're writing the script for Chapter 2, it's like, oh shit, we didn't really give that any attention in It Chapter 1. Silver, the bike, the Barons, Bill as a rider, Eddie's inhaler, the theme of belief, like all of those things are like core themes in the book.
But since you didn't include them in the first chapter, now it feels super jarring.
Yeah, and it's not like Silver was in the first movie.
It just wasn't emphasized.
Yeah, there was no attention drawn to it. I'm not sure Bill even yells "Hi-ho, Silver" at all.
I don't remember him doing it. I'll go back and I'll rewatch it and I'll add an annotation.
So I kind of wish we had somebody with us who hadn't read the book, so we could say, hey, what were your thoughts when Bill sees Silver in the window at the junk shop? Like, was that important to you at all? Did you see any significance in that?
Yeah, and it's jarring with the kids because they have to digitally de-age and auto-tune some of their voices because like 3 of them are going through puberty.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, they didn't do a good job. It's very jarring, especially since I just watched this past movie.
That technology it's not perfected.
I would have rather them just not done it. I think that because they were trying to recapture that magic that the kids could bring. But instead, we got this jarring, almost alien-looking versions of these kids.
And also, it seems to work much better with adults. Clark, Greg, and Samuel L. Jackson and Captain Marvel, when they were de-aged. Luke Skywalker and The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm not going to say these things are perfect.
They're not perfect. And there's also been some time to advance the technology. At the same time, I'm like... But that doesn't help this movie, is what I'm saying.
Right. That is something that bothered me extremely the first time I watched it. Honestly, it bothers me less now, probably just because I know it's there and I gird myself for it.
You put up your defenses against the...
shields are up, yeah.
You're like, I will defend against the puberty children.
I would rather have the kids in the movie and have that than not have them there, because I guess that was the other option, was recasting them or excluding the kids entirely.
I would have excluded them entirely, and I would have written around it. I think that's what they needed. They wrote this movie with the intention of being able to use the kids or being able to fall back on them, and then when they tried to, it didn't work.
I wouldn't have excluded them entirely, but I could have maybe seen them being used a little less, although I don't think that would have made it a better movie. It would have just made this one part of it less awkward.
I think they should have just focused on the adults and tried to figure out a way to write it as just the adults. I don't know how you would have done that. They wrote themselves into a corner doing this.
Yes, but I don't think that's going to end up being a better movie. That's probably going to end up being a worse movie. Because it's just, like we said earlier, the kids are the better part of it. And yes, it's awkward because they're going through puberty, but I think, I don't know. That's my opinion. I think it's better with them in it than it would be without them, just because the adults are so much less endearing.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
You've mentioned how the theme of memories is kind of half-assed and doesn't really work for you, even though it kind of starts on this... The movie opens on this narration from Stan.
Yeah.
Where he says the line, "Sometimes we are what we wish we could forget," which is kind of on point with the theme, but just give me your thoughts on memories and how it works or doesn't work.
The reason it works in the book is because it's an unfolding mystery. You're discovering everything together with the kids, or the adults.
Yep.
As they relive their memories as children. Here it doesn't work because we already know. Yep. We were there for the first movie. I at least assumed that everyone in that theater was there for the first movie. Maybe like a handful, small percentage.
Yeah.
Saw this one first. And there is a line that you shouldn't assume anything about your audience. But at the same time, the way the book was written was for those things to be happening in tandem with each other. And here, it's just, okay, they don't have their memory, but we already know what their memories are. So there's nothing to discover. There's no horror to be revealed because we've already experienced the horror.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't work. They forgot. Okay, they forgot. They're gonna remember, or they won't remember. It doesn't matter anymore because we know what they're going into.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you said. Just a little bit more on some themes. Bullying. They play up the bullying theme a lot in this one with the Adrian Mellon scene. Mm-hmm. But then you also get a lot, or maybe not a lot, but you get 2 or 3 more flashbacks with Henry Bowers. Young Henry Bowers had already gone through puberty, so he
works.
Yeah, he's a whole lot less awkward.
I have some advice for the person who does the next adaptation. Just age the kids up, just ever so slightly.
Or just film it all together.
Okay, well, that's ideal, but...
So there were some scenes in the movie where I felt like the kids weren't being de-aged, and some where they were being de-aged. I was wondering if some of the scenes that they used in this movie with the kids were like alternate scenes or deleted scenes from the first movie that they recycled into this one.
Some of them weren't as jarring, so I can kind of see that.
Richie was a big one, and like the clubhouse scene where you could really tell.
You could really tell he grew like 4 inches and was talking like this.
But then there were other scenes where it wasn't nearly as bad.
The arcade wasn't nearly as bad.
The arcade and Paul Bunyan, no. So I was wondering if that was like something that was filmed for the original movie and just not used, or they said, well, we're probably going to do a second one. I don't know, but...
I don't know. In any event, those scenes don't look nearly as bad.
Yeah. And moving along, meta-horror versus the abstract ideas of horror. So we talked in the last episode about how the idea was to take away the concrete fears of kids, vampires, the mummy, and such, and replace them with abstract ideas, kind of how it's described in the book that Pennywise feels about adult fears. And like an example in this movie is Ben's scare in the school where he's not afraid of a mummy, he's afraid of being rejected by a girl.
And being called fat.
So just looking at this on a whole, I think over both movies there are a couple scares that work, but as a whole I think it didn't work. Mm-hmm. But I can see, like, on paper, people pitching this before it gets made, like, we're going to make it...
I can see it on paper, 100%.
But I don't think for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, it didn't work out, and I kind of wish they would have stuck with either the classic monsters or done updated monsters.
I don't know. We'll probably get more into it when we get into the characters, because I got stuff to say about each specific scare.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about each one of them.
I think what happened in between this movie and the first movie is Pennywise watched a Sam Raimi film and decided, oh, that's what people are afraid of.
Was it Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness?
No, it was closer to Evil Dead.
So actually, we had that whole discussion in a previous pre-show about how it shouldn't be considered a horror movie. I had a conversation over the weekend with somebody who didn't show it to their kids because they thought their kids would be too scared.
I guess. I don't know. I grew up watching Nightmare on Elm Street, so...
You know, I watched horror movies as a kid, so I'm super desensitized to it.
I didn't think it was that much worse than... Like, there's one or two scenes that might have freaked me out a little bit, like doing the whole Ringu thing and crawling out of the mirror.
Yeah, that was creepy. I thought the creepiest part was, like, her chasing Strange in America when she was, like, all cut up and covered in blood and...
Oh, when she was possessing other Wanda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of creepy.
When she murdered everybody.
Yeah, that was great. That scene was worth the price of admission.
I agree with that.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
All right, so let's jump into characters, and we're going to talk about the losers as they appear in order, and then Henry and Pennywise, which means we kick it off with Mike Hanlon, played by Isaiah Mustafa. I thought Isaiah Mustafa did a good job with what he had.
He tried.
I thought it was a good performance. My issue with this character was writing, not performance. This character had lost all the confidence. In the book and in the miniseries, he's like the sage character. When he makes the phone calls and they all come to him, they're all looking to Mike for answers. Mike is the guy who knows what's going on. He's the Gandalf of the group. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in the book and the miniseries, when he's struck down like Gandalf is, they're kind of lost and they have to look to Bill, Aragorn, to kind of pick them up and lead them. But like I've said in previous episodes, I'm glad that Mike gets to be a part of the conclusion of this story, but it isn't really Mike.
It's not Mike. It's not Mike at all.
It's just like this shook up shell of what could have been Mike.
It's a scared homeless man shouting at the sky.
What are your thoughts?
I think that, and I'm sure we'll get more into this as we go. This strikes me as a person going, I need to fix Mike Hanlon, and breaking him more in the process.
There's nothing to fix.
I agree with that.
He was like Stephen King's like one character of color who wasn't a ball of stereotypes, who felt like a real person.
And now he is a drug-addled crazy person who drugs his friends and lies to them and almost gets them all murdered because we have to include him in the sewer scene or we're racist.
Is it racist to not give him any scares in this movie?
I think so. Do better, Andy Muschietti.
Yeah, I don't like that. I kind of like what was going on with the Ritual of Chud, but I don't like where it goes. I don't like that he has to lie to them to get them down there. You had a note that it felt weird that he had to drug Bill to get him to see that vision.
I figured that Bill would be the one character he wouldn't have to draw. All of these characters are done dirty. Bill himself wants to run away like a little girl.
Yeah.
Mike is the only one that's begging them to stand and fight, which I guess is the one good character part for him.
Is the one redeeming quality.
He's like, well, we have to deal with this.
And I guess, like, the thought is like, okay, we're going to make him more real. He's the one who's had to stay, who's had to deal with all this.
They tried to make him a Lovecraftian character. They just wrote him poorly.
He's turned to drugs to have to deal with all this stuff because that's more likely what a real person would do rather than just being, you know, strong or whatever.
It's almost like the scriptwriter forgot that there was 27 years of nothing.
Yeah.
Like, the killings just recently, I know that he'd been researching, like, the stuff that was going on in the book, but researching bad stuff that happened in the past doesn't tend to drive a person insane.
Yes, I wouldn't say that having to stay in Derry and getting to not forget, it definitely wouldn't have been
easy, but
it's not like he was experiencing Pennywise murders the whole 27 years he was there.
No, he was just waiting for them to happen.
Which, maybe you could say that's worse, but I don't know.
I see my note on there. I forgot that Mike was in the movie. I think it's when he came. I think I wrote that when we get back to the library after we spent so much time with everybody else. I was like, I forgot that he was here. So in the book, now that I'm thinking about, he doesn't really have a separate scare during that walkabout segment where the rest of them do. But it makes up for it with the interludes.
Yeah, but he feels as important, if not more important of a character because of the interludes.
I feel like Welcome to Derry should really just be Mike Hanlon researching the interludes.
I think that would be the perfect framing device. Make it an anthology series. Yeah. The framing device is Mike Hanlon doing interviews and making journal entries. And if it were me, I'd do 6 episodes, one on the Bradley gang, one on the logger who goes nuts, one on the original Derry colonists who disappear, one on the black spot. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
That would be killer. And
WB, give us $5 and we give you this idea.
Yeah, you can has it. Just put our name in the credits and that's fine.
Link our Spotify page.
Yeah, exactly. The Native American stuff, I think I like it on paper, but not the execution.
Here's my problem with it. Can we deny that this movie was trying its hardest to be more sensitive and more inclusive?
No.
Okay. Then why is the only portrayal I ever get of Native Americans as mystical shaman and spirit people?
Doing smoke dances and...
We must smoke 'em the peace pipe in this hut and that will give us visions.
Yeah, Pet Sematary has gotten in trouble for that stereotype too.
I think that stereotype has its place in history.
Yeah.
But when you're... this movie's clearly trying to modernize some things. It's clearly trying to diversify its cast. So why is this still the only way we write Native American characters?
So the reason why I like the thought of it and would have liked to see it go in a different direction is because when I was reading the book and we were in the interludes, I was thinking, well, before the European colonists, the Dairy Company, came to this area in Maine, surely Pennywise had run-ins with the indigenous people, and I want to know more about that. I want to know what happened there.
I think that there is a story there. I just think, and especially when you add the drug-fueled filter over everything, it really emphasizes that stereotype. And I'm not even a person who loathes stereotypes. It just contrasts with everything else the movie's trying to do and say.
Right. And again, this Native American piece of it could be something that goes into Welcome to Derry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick note, I like his attic. I think his attic is cool. If I were single, I would totally live in a place like that.
Yeah, no, I like that. Oh, did we say something about his parents dying?
Yeah, kind of the goodness of Mike in the book is he has this really amazing relationship with his parents, and they changed that to just make him more sad when it was just not necessary. I think a better sad backstory would have been what was actually in the book, and just talk a little bit about the feud between the Bowers and the Hanlons. If you really wanted to kill his parents, I guess you could have made it so that the Bowers were involved somehow.
I think I brought this up in our first episode. You just make Henry Bauer's dad, since he's a cop now, shoot a black man unprovoked.
They would have never put that in this movie. But yes,
I don't know. I think a fuck the police message could have sold some tickets.
I think the fact that they were afraid to put any racist theme in this at all, there's no way they would have ever done that.
They were terrified of it up until they cut the Native Americans.
Yeah, okay. Racist against people.
of black people.
Yeah. It was nice that at the end that he's the one who comes up with the way to beat him. It doesn't make up for any of the other stuff, but at least he had some sort of purpose for being down there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Bill, played by James McAvoy. I'm a little biased. I'm a big X-Men person. Really like James McAvoy.
He is a very good actor.
This isn't his best movie.
This might be his worst movie.
I don't know, maybe. I don't think he's awful, but it's not... I don't know. I have a hard time judging James McAvoy here. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's terrible. What do you think?
I think he's about average. I think this... If you would have told me that... If I didn't know that this wasn't his first role in a major motion picture, I would have assumed it's his first role in a major motion picture. It's not bad. He did something to get the role.
He was one of the first 3 people cast. They cast Bill Hader as Richie, Jessica Chastain as Bev, and James McAvoy as Bill. Those were the 3 they went after first.
Okay.
They did an interview with the kids, and they asked them who they envisioned playing their characters as adults. And Jaden, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but the kid who plays Bill, he said James McAvoy, and the girl who plays Bev, Sophia Lillis, she said Jessica Chastain.
She should have said Selena Gomez.
I'm not going to respond to that. But yeah, that's just a cool behind the scene thing. So we talked earlier about how him being a writer wasn't mentioned in the first one at all. It implied that he was an artist because it showed the pictures he was drawing of Bev, and now he's a writer.
Yeah, again, it feels like they changed gears at some point in development where they went, well, this is the iconic way it was, so now we have to do it this way, even though we set it up differently in the first movie. I never got the smallest inkling that he gave a fuck about storytelling in the first movie.
I think maybe not with all of the things I listed earlier, but with this one, I would have been interested to see them make him a horror author. Maybe he's like a comic book artist.
I would have said, with the drawings, go comic book artist.
Yeah.
And like maybe someone's doing an adaptation of his
movie.
Of his movie.
Of his book. Yeah, and then it's basically the same from there.
It's Zack Snyder and Frank Miller for 300. They're just,
exactly.
They're talking to each other, going, "This is how I envision framing the shot."
Instead, you get this walk back, and it's confusing. But my big issue with Big Bill is that when he gets his phone call, there's no conversation with Audra about George. There's no revelation of he forgot about George. Georgie is not mentioned until 1 hour and 20 minutes into this movie, where he's going past his childhood home. When they do the reunion, he's ready to go and leave with everybody. There's no revenge for Georgie. There's no, I gotta kill this fucking clown.
Instead, he kind of has like a lover spat with his wife.
Yeah.
And it ends there.
I feel like that just like neuters Bill's whole character, because his thing is, I can't get Georgie back, so I have to kill Pennywise.
I think him wanting to leave is the one that made me upset the most.
Yes.
Because he, aside from Mike, should be the one willing to stay. So I could see making everyone else a coward and having to convince them. There's an argument for everybody else. There isn't for Bill.
In the book, they all want to stay. There's no hesitation to fight Pennywise, which I like, but I can't admit maybe that's not super real.
Yeah.
And then in the miniseries, they kind of change it, so most of them, aside from Mike and Bill, particularly Richie, are ready to leave. They're like, fuck this, we're not fighting this clown. Which is different from the book, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And that they take this even further in this one, where it's everybody except for Mike, including Bill. But Bill has to get revenge for Georgie. He has to make sure that no more kids die like Georgie did.
That's it. That was his entire character.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do it.
And it's not like they had to move a mountain to make that be part of the movie. It just changed some lines. Like,
the one thing you might need to change is who Mike drugs to convince them to stay.
And then, of course, this does end up coming to be part of it because, well, you talk about his scare with the sewer first, and then we'll talk about Skateboard Kid.
Okay, so he sees, like, Georgie in the sewer. His face is veiled in shadow. You don't see him at all. He's lifting his arms up and beckoning Bill. He has both arms now all of a sudden, even though the ghost of him always had one arm before. He's holding up his paper boat, and he reaches his arm down in the sewer, knowing there is a man-eating sewer clown. And he just dives his arm right in there. this is where memory loss could have played a part. But they didn't emphasize that he had forgotten enough to be dumb enough to stick his arm in the sewer. And then what happens? Pennywise grabs him, covers him in arms. If I was Pennywise, I would have just killed him right there.
So, here's the thing. How does he even know where Georgie disappeared?
Yeah, like which grate he fell through.
How does he even know that he fell through a grate? Like, because in the book, Georgie gets his arm ripped off. The gardener, the police chief, comes out, finds his body, wraps him up, and brings him home. Mm-hmm. It says, your kid was killed over here. But this, he goes out to play and he disappears.
I guess the only thing you could say is that one woman saw him for a minute and then he was gone.
Yeah, that's the lady with the cat.
But that's all I can think of. And even then, he could have walked down the street.
Yeah. I guess maybe somebody saw the pool of blood in the street.
Yeah. And then he gets his paper boat, which is his artifact.
His token.
You
bought a real token for your token?
This might be more clever than I'm giving it credit for. But like when I watched it this time, I was like, this is Pennywise tricking them into saying Mike's thing is going to work, giving him his token.
Maybe.
I don't know if that was the intent. That was me trying to be very forgiving here in a reading of the situation.
Real quick rewind on Mike. We didn't mention his token. His token was a rock covered in blood from the rock fight. I thought that was cute.
I think a lot of the tokens are good.
Yeah.
Which is probably a reason this could have worked with a few rewrites or a few restructuring.
I think we'll talk about the ritual when we get to Pennywise.
Yeah.
Okay. So Skateboard Kid, fuck you, Andy Muschietti, for killing that little boy.
I like it and I hate it at the same time.
Yes.
I like it because he made him a character that they saw multiple times.
Yes, in the Chinese restaurant.
I didn't even realize that the first time I saw the movie.
Neither did I.
But he's the kid they see in the Chinese restaurant. He's the kid that he runs into. He's the kid and that gets murdered in front of him. So they're trying to form a connection there, which is more than I can say for most of the stuff in this movie. Mm-hmm. As much as I like the bleacher scene, it's kind of just, hey, we need a Pennywise killing somebody here for a good scare.
That girl is in the movie earlier.
Yeah, she's there with Adrian Mellon.
Yeah.
But none of the characters know her.
Yeah.
It's sort of an aside. It's a very good trailer fodder. It's a very good scare.
Yeah.
But there's no connection to the losers with any of that. Here, there's a connection to the losers, and I can at least appreciate that. I think I even mentioned this in my notes. How was this so hard to do more stuff like this?
And it does go into the theme of Georgie, and this kind of like wakes up Bill's like revenge-fueled side for Georgie.
Yeah, and this is when he finally starts acting like Bill.
Yeah, there's the part in Nebolt Street where the stupid spider Stan is trying to kill Richie, and Eddie doesn't do anything. They finally stop it, and he like slams Eddie up against the wall. It's like, that thing killed Georgie, that thing killed the kid, and killed Stan. You want Richie to die too? Because he's just as upset that Skateboard Kid died as he is about Stan and George. I was as upset that as the kid's riding away on the skateboard, like Bill yells, "Be careful." And I was like ready, like the kid to like turn around and say, "You can't be careful on a skateboard."
And that line should have been in the movie.
Yeah.
You're telling me you can include "Kiss Me, Fat Boy," but you can't include "You can't be careful on a skateboard."
Yeah. I kind of don't like it just because it was just sad. Like, I mean, that's good because it was effective.
It did what it was supposed to do, and it built up the tension. It had Pennywise there slamming his head against the wall. It wasn't just like a random boo and rush at the camera.
Yeah, because even though I've seen this maybe 3 times when I was watching it earlier, I'm like, Bill, stop trying to punch it. Like, get up, get some leverage, use your legs, like, break the fucking glass.
Tell the kid to run back the way he came.
Yeah, or that, or do that.
Just
that
literally anything else. But at the same time, they're both paralyzed, terrified of this clown that's like licking glass. I thought the tongue looked kind of goofy. I would have just had him use his actual tongue.
Yeah.
But then, like, the face stretches into that smile and he smashes through the glass.
It's not my favorite scare in the movie, but it's definitely one of the better ones.
Yeah, it's a scene that actually does what it's supposed to do.
Okay, no Audra. Or Audra is in one scene.
And to me, that completely detracts from so much of what made the book good, including using the last bit of the magic and belief and just the power of someone loving you coming to find you. You know,
I thought my biggest issue is that you don't get that last scene with Silver. And to me, because the book and the miniseries ends the same way, to me, that is the end of the story. So every time I've watched this, I feel like, oh, it's not over yet.
This movie spent so much time mocking Stephen King endings, and I'm sitting there going, but this is one of the good ones.
Yeah, one of his best.
This is one of the ones that's this isn't The Stand. This makes sense.
Yeah.
I had to do. Apparently, people don't like the ending to Stephen King's It. I'm guessing that's mostly based off the miniseries and lacking some of the context.
Well, I've read reviews of the book where they don't like the whole, like, Derry literally falling to pieces and caving in on itself. But I disagree. Like, I think that part is sweet.
I disagree also because throughout the book you learn that Derry is pretty much it.
Yeah.
It and Derry are, like, entwined at that point.
Yeah, and they kill Pennywise, so
it falls to pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we are on beer 2 now.
I feel like they're super inconsistent about the stutter.
They might as well not have even included it.
There are parts where he stutters a lot, and then I swear there are parts where he says 5 sentences where he doesn't stutter at all.
And I understand. It can be
annoying.
It's annoying. It's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's hard to act. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, that's the character.
They did it in the miniseries. The guy who played Adult Bill, Richard Thomas, he stuttered the hell out of that performance. Yeah. Granted, a lot of people don't like that performance and criticize him a lot, but he did it.
Here's my hot take. I think he's a better Bill.
I do too, but I don't know like how much of that is nostalgia in me. But
I'm strictly going by playing the character.
Yes,
James McAvoy is a better actor, but he did not play Bill.
No,
the script didn't ask him to play Bill.
No, he plays like Bill Light.
Yeah,
it's like Bill with only 10 calories.
He's Duff Light. The kind Homer won't drink.
What's with you and the Simpsons references tonight? That's my gig. No, it's good. I'll keep them coming. Keep them coming.
I don't know. I saw Duff, and now all I can think about is the Simpsons.
I like it. Keep it coming. All right, so we're going to run long. Let's keep going. Eddie Kasprak, played by James Ransone.
I think he's the second best adult.
I think Eddie was one of the better kids.
Yeah.
They're all good.
Yeah.
I think he was one of the best kids. I talked about in the last episode how I felt like it's a good adaptation of the character, but it's also feels like a different character, but it keeps like all the important parts of Eddie. Mm-hmm. And the adult Eddie in this movie continues that.
Yeah. You have him being like a risk analyst. That's actually a decent update.
That totally makes sense.
For what a neurotic person would become.
Yes.
It's probably more lucrative than owning a limo business these days.
What with the gig economy and Uber and all that.
Oh, we have the inhaler on here. We both noted the inhaler.
Do you ever even see the inhaler in part 1?
I'll have to go back and rewatch it again. I kept expecting to see it, and then they kept, it's time for your pill, Eddie.
Yeah, I thought just like in the first one, they just changed the inhaler to pills. Which is kind of more modern because, pills are like a big thing these days and it's a big topic of conversation.
If it was shown, it's going to be just like Silver, where it's something more in the background. Because even when he throws pills at his mom, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm like 99% sure it's not an inhaler.
They're gazebos.
They're gazebos.
What do you call it, Eddie? A gazebo?
Yeah. That's when I noticed that they were switching gears on a bunch of stuff, which is why I noted it, because it's just like...
Same thing. I don't know. It's not the worst part of this movie, but it's just
something you notice when you, especially if you're watching them back to back, which isn't something you might have done when the movie first came out, but it's definitely what you do now with them on streaming or.
Yeah, I feel like even though like if you would have asked me in the first one if I had the choice, I would have went go with the inhaler. It's iconic. But I didn't mind that they updated it to pills, and I kind of wish they would have just stuck with it.
I think that's part of this movie's problem, is they made decisions and then they walk back on them.
Yep.
Either because they realize they have to, or they feel they need to.
Yeah. And the inhaler is Eddie's token.
Yeah.
Which totally makes sense. Completely support there. So just more about adult Eddie. He's still a hypochondriac. He's still, like in the book, he marries his mother his mother and Myra are played by the same
actress, yeah.
Which is great.
That I support. I love that you included my note that she isn't fat enough.
I included all of your notes,
Really?
regardless of how I felt about them.
Wow, because I deleted a lot of them. I'll remember that next time.
But you included that Myra is not fat enough, or whatever.
I honestly just thought that she should have been, because to me she just looked like she was an overweight woman, but she was pretty. Mm-hmm. But in the book they describe her as she's not just fat, but enormous.
Yeah, but granted, that is like King, like, monstrifying overweight people.
I just really wanted to see a really, really fat person.
I mean, the way King describes his mom in the book is like when she died, she blocked the door to her apartment so that they had to go in through the fire escape to get her dead body.
Yeah, like I was expecting what's eating yogurt grape.
She fell through the floor. Accurate about Eddie is that, you know, when he's a kid, he has all this growth. He learns about placebos, and he decides all this stuff is bullshit, and he has all this real growth. But then when he leaves Derry, he kind of loses all that, and he kind of goes back to his old patterns. And they do all of that, and they establish all of that well in this movie.
Yeah. Now, the reason that happens, I feel, in the book is because he walks back on it with his mom in the confrontation, so he can go hang out with his friends.
Yes.
But I will say that's a little hard to include.
I mean, they did have him standing up to his mom in the first movie. It's not as dramatic as it is in the book, but...
He just didn't walk back on his own eroticisms in order to get his way.
Yeah. I have to say, the pharmacy scare is probably the worst one.
I feel that they can just constantly realize that a scene they filmed wasn't scary, so they tried to make it funny.
One of my core issues with this movie is that there's too much comedy, and horror movies need to have some amount of comedy, and there is a balance, and it is difficult.
If it's actually funny, it's fine.
Yeah.
This wasn't... They literally just overlaid "Just Call Me Angel" over him
Just
getting...
call me
over him getting... But it wasn't even like...
Morning.
It was like the briefest clip of the song.
Yeah, I mean,
probably
you got like 5 seconds of it.
Probably because it wasn't there originally. They probably slowed down the puke scene because they realized the scene didn't work, so we gotta make it funny.
Even though the scene didn't work, that part was still gross, and it would have been better without the song.
It would have been... You'd just go for gross out at that point.
I thought the scene started kind of scary when he goes down the stairs and he's walking through the storeroom, and you see like these needles and like with half full with injections, and you're like, oh my god, what are those for? Mm-hmm. Like,
and then he gets to his mom strapped on the table,
and it just goes downhill.
At that point, I'm just like, bro, you gotta know this is a trap.
Yeah.
I don't... Because at that point, that was post his arm break, so he knows Pennywise is a thing. Yeah.
They didn't break his arm. Well, I guess that's not like a huge deal, but it just occurred to me they didn't break his arm as an adult as well.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a too big a deal.
It's a bigger deal to me if they were trying to go for the mirror themes, but they kind of brush a lot of that to the side.
Yeah, because of the way it's structured, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll table his encounter with Henry.
Instead he gets stabbed in the cheek now.
Yeah, which we'll talk about that when we get to Henry.
Yeah.
So they kind of add this subplot about him also being like, him and Richie kind of being like the two most scared, to the point where he doesn't help Bill when Richie's being attacked by Spider Stan. When Bev gets dragged down by the witch in the water, he's the only one who doesn't jump in after Bev to save her.
So she gives him a spear.
So she gives him... It kills monsters. Really?
If you believe it does. Which would have worked if they would have established belief in the first movie.
Yeah, that's one of those things I listed where, like, it's important in the book and it's important in the miniseries. They don't really... Like, there's no slingshot in the original movie, but now they're kind of walking back and like, oh, this is an important thing we'll have to... It's weird.
Yeah.
What did you think about his death?
It wasn't the worst. It was played a little too comically.
Yeah.
So when I got to that point in the movie, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. I was pretty done by that point.
I don't have a lot to say on it.
It was fine.
He gets stabbed. Richie's really trying to save him at that point because he's gay for Eddie now.
Yep. Which we'll talk about when we get to Richie.
And
who's next?
And that's really all I got to say on it. It was
fine.
It was fine.
Would you have changed it to another loser, or do you like that it's still Eddie?
At this point, they've made so many changes. I would have literally plucked a name out of the hat, and that's the character I would have killed off.
What if it was Mike? Like, what if he leads them all down there, lies to them, that gets them all down there, and then he's the one who's killed by Pennywise?
Do you want my opinion from a writing perspective? He's 100% the one who should have died. Mm-hmm. The way they wrote him, he's the one who gets them all down there. He lies to them. He's completely doped out of his skull on magic Indian medicine. That character 100% will be the character to die in any novel.
Yeah.
In almost any other script. But because Eddie died in the book, actually, because Eddie died in the original miniseries, because this clearly takes more from the miniseries than it does from the book.
Yeah.
That's the one they chose to have to die. The only reason it kind of works is because of the not quite relationship they set up between Richie and Eddie.
Which we mentioned in the Chapter 1 episode that they spend a lot more time building Eddie and Richie's relationship than Bill and Eddie or Bill and Richie, which of course there's a point to that, which we'll talk about when we come to Richie.
It lacked a lot of the thematic pause that you get from the book, where he's spraying it in the face and he has to get close to it because he's using it as an inhaler so he gets his arm bit off, but he's still doing something. Here he throws a spear and then he gets distracted because he's like, hey
guys, I killed it.
I totally heard it. That was super cool.
But at least it's still touching on that theme of belief.
Yeah.
I believe it'll kill Pennywise, but it doesn't. But it does.
It hurts
him. Yeah. Okay. Richie.
Eddie's also the one who when he's bleeding out, he's like, I made him small. That's how I was able to choke him out in the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Before getting puked on. So that kind of plays into what they did there.
I like the flashback with Greta, and then I like that you get to see adult Greta, and she's the same person.
I honestly adored that inclusion.
Mm-hmm. It just reminded me a little I've met people that I knew in high school and then seen them as adults and oh, you're still just who you were in high school. And it's sad now.
They were posh because that was when they peaked.
Yeah.
People always stay who they are when they peaked.
Yeah.
So.
Richie. I was disappointed that Seth Green was not cast as Richie.
Thank you.
I know you were as well.
I cried. That's when I checked out.
That being said, I do think that Bill Hader was good casting, and if nothing else, he looks and acts similarly to, is it Finn Wolfhard?
Probably. I don't know actors' names
it's Wolf Finnhard. Damn it, I should know this. This kid's big shit these days.
Make the wolf hard.
He's very similar to the kid who plays Richie in the original one.
Yeah. I could see that kid growing up to be this person.
There are a handful of the kids that, Bev, the girl who plays her, and the adult who plays her. I really believe that they could be the same person. Same with Richie and Eddie, like we said. There's a few of them. So I thought the casting there was on point for that, at least. You have a note here that you don't think he's funny at all.
I think 0 of his jokes land. Which is bad when you want him to be a famous comedian.
Granted, he's not funny when he's on stage either.
Yeah, and he has I don't write my own material. And it's kind of funny when Eddie says, I knew it. But at the same time, how do you know that? You didn't remember any of these people until 5 minutes ago.
Well, maybe he knew who he was, but he didn't put 2 and 2 together. That was because they all, in the book, they all knew of Bill, but they didn't realize it was their Bill.
Okay, I guess that's fair. But at the same time, I feel that's kind of counterintuitive. Because these people were all supposed to grow up to be the person they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that Richie wanted to grow up to be a person who reads other people's jokes and bombs on stage and throws up before
Well, granted, his jokes weren't funny in the first one either. So
I guess. Yeah.
maybe the origin is like, he's like, okay, I'm a funny guy, but the jokes I come up with aren't funny, so I just need a good writer, and then I'll perform them.
Okay, well, before you said I need a good writer, I was gonna say, so he's just the Carlos Mencia of the Loser Squad.
I guess so. I didn't think he was super funny. Maybe not. I didn't dislike it as much as you, but I really like Bill Hader because I watch him a lot on Saturday Night Live. He has a lot of classic SNL characters that are super funny, but it kind of worked for me in that I didn't think that Kid Richie was very funny either, and to me it felt like a natural continuation of that character. Somebody who's maybe has a little bit of a tighter and a cleaner bit. It's not all dick jokes, but still at his core isn't super funny.
I'm trying to remember the name of this comedian. He's super pale, blonde, a little overweight. Man, I'm gonna feel really dumb here. But he has this really deadspan voice. He has a Hot Pockets joke. Jim Gaffigan.
Jim Gaffigan, oh yeah, I love that guy.
Because he kind of has this sort of almost sad, dead sounding voice.
Yeah.
Where it feels like he's almost just reading the jokes he wrote backstage.
There is a movie called Troop Zero.
Yeah.
Where he plays a single dad. And it's just so perfect.
So Bill Hader or Richie Tozer is now Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
I'm going up here, talk about my Hot Pockets.
So, I feel like I've said this a lot this episode, and I'm going to say it more. I like this on paper, but I didn't like the execution, but now I'm talking about Paul Bunyan.
Also, yes. This is the reason I feel this scene might have been filmed before, is when they had that scene in the first movie where they're like, what are you afraid of? And he looks behind him, but then he says clowns.
Yeah.
But the Paul Bunyan statue is in the park.
Yeah, that might have been filmed during the original movie production. I'm not surprised at all.
I don't think the Paul Bunyan statue looks good, and that's really the biggest problem with the scene.
Yeah, they made it... I wish it just would have looked like Paul Bunyan. Instead, it's falling to pieces, and he has these jagged teeth. And it's just why not just make him Paul Bunyan? I mean, it's scary enough that a statue comes to life and tries to kill you.
Well, because it has to look like the realest Paul Bunyan that has ever existed.
That doesn't look like the realest Paul Bunyan.
I don't know, dude.
If it were me, I would have included Babe the Big Blue Ox.
I don't think...
Maybe they just...
I don't know if this actually happened or if I keep imagining it happened because of how bad it looks. Do bats fly out of its mouth?
Yes.
Okay, so that actually happened.
Yeah, that was weird. So you had this note here, why do all these adaptions make Richie the coward? And I made a note in reply, and I said that I think in some ways it's a remake of the miniseries instead of an adaptation.
And when I read that note, I was like, you know what, 100%. I feel like there's a lot of spirit of the miniseries in this, even though people keep telling me how horrible the miniseries is and how great this movie is.
Nope.
I disagree.
So some other things that were plucked right out of the miniseries, The Deadlights, Kiss Me, Fat Boy, There's more. What are your thoughts on Richie and his deep, dark secret? I like it. I don't think I was super on top of it the first time I saw this movie. The more I sit with it, the more it makes sense. And I actually think there's support for it in the book. And I actually had some quotes from the book that supported this, and I lost the note document.
Was it when he was fantasizing about Bev's panties?
No.
Or when he was talking about that hippie chick he married and then called to ask if he got her pregnant when his vasectomy didn't take?
No, it's after they've killed Pennywise and they decide to leave Eddie's body in Pennywise's chamber, when they go out the little door, Richie pauses and looks at the door. I forget who it is, but I think it's Beverly who's like, Richie, what are you doing? We have to get going. And it hints that Richie is staring at the door and crying.
Okay, here's my problem with that, is those sort of readings are the sort of things that say, like, if I had to leave you down in a sewer and then I cried, that I was secretly in love with you the whole time. There is a love that you can have for a friend without it being romantic or sexual. And that's my opinion on this, is people leading up to this movie, a YouTuber that I'm subscribed to, Grace Randolph, talked about how they needed to make Eddie gay to diversify the cast, and how there's so much evidence for it in the book. And I had just read the book at the time, and I was like, there literally isn't. There's literally zero evidence for Eddie being gay. I think there's more
for Richie.
There's way more for Richie, but I still don't think there's enough to justify the change. I think this is an example of them wanting to diversify the cast because, let's be honest, this book came out in, 1980 something?
Yeah.
People didn't think about diversity as much back then. I appreciate them trying to add some diversity. I don't think it worked as well as they wanted it to. I think it worked better than what they tried to do to Mike.
Yeah.
I think that the chemistry between Bill Hader and the person who played Eddie goes leagues to helping this.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm sitting there going, it takes me out of the movie because all I can think about is, okay, they added this because...
It worked for me, and part of it, like, I went into our last reading of the book looking for, like, okay, I sat down and I said, I'm going to read this book as if Richie is gay.
As if Richie is gay.
And it worked for me. Like, it seriously worked for me. It's not... I had a whole list of notes. I'm so mad that I lost it. Like, when Eddie is dying, the last person he talks to is Richie. There are so many, like, little interactions with them, like, nitpicking at each other, that it feels like they have more of a relationship that's not being hinted at and then Stephen King is being explicit about.
Am I secretly in love with Ash for riffing on him for being a furry? Because that's how it felt to me.
He doesn't tit... You guys don't tit for tat, though.
I guess
you just rag on him.
I do just rag on him.
That's totally different.
But Eddie clearly wasn't in love with him back either. So
no, I do think in this it's implied that it was not reciprocated.
It was not reciprocated. My big problem... I don't want to say this as a problem, because really if they keep doing this, I really don't care. But now I feel if they ever adapt this again, Richie is going to be gay because he was gay in the last one, and you can't change that unless you made somebody else gay. But now they've opened this door to where all these readings now have to include it. And that's sort of why I'm always kind of iffy when people like start playing with what happened in the book and making little changes. And if it wasn't for the chemistry between the two actors, I probably would have just outright hated it. It's like what's his face talked about in the book Bill when he was having his argument with his professor about how Shakespeare probably just wanted to write a fun story, and now people do all these modern readings.
I think that's fine though if it works.
If it works,
and I think it does.
I disagree. That is my hot take. I
don't think that's a hot take. I think that's the normal take.
I think they emphasize way too much them being sexually attractive to Bev on the cusp of puberty for it to be an accurate reading.
Well, then he could just be bi.
Bisexual would work.
I mean, it never explicitly says he's gay.
I believe in the Fujiwara. Is that the guy's name? In their first script, he was written to be bisexual.
I mean, and he could... It doesn't... he could still be bisexual.
I think one of the things that really hurts this for me, and I've been trying to work on my phrasing this whole time, is the Pennywise Scare. It doesn't work. Shouting... The way he shouts, "I know your secret, your dirty little secret," I think would have probably worked better as like something he's whispering to him as he's getting closer to him instead of screaming. A lot of these scares are Pennywise screaming a line, and it's not scary, and it doesn't get under my skin.
I didn't really like any of that scene to begin with, so...
And that doesn't help what they're trying to set up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another thing for me was that it gave Richie an explanation for his acting out. Like, it's a repression, something that he's overcompensating for.
I know a little bit about that before I started just admitting that a dick's not a deal breaker, so I guess I shouldn't be as hard on this as I have been.
Yeah, to me, it just kind of fit. I'm sure it probably, that was never something that really crossed King's mind.
Yeah.
But it kind of just works to me. There's nothing in the book that explicitly, makes it for him that a dick is a deal breaker. All right, let's go to Ben, which... Ben. Okay.
I think he's the worst adult.
He's not worse than Mike.
I just mean in terms of this guy's acting. I don't think he did a good job.
I don't really think he's a bad actor. I think it was just bad casting.
And bad chemistry. I do not believe for a second that Bev and Ben want to fuck.
No.
The big climax of their character arcs is convincing us that they want to fuck. And I don't believe that these two people like each other at all.
Well, we'll get to that. So let's talk about Jay Ryan, who, Jeremy Ray Taylor as Kid Ben, probably my favorite of all the kids.
New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, I mean, all of that
great.
was just super adorable.
It's cute. It's wholesome.
This
who played Ben in the original miniseries?
Brandon Kane.
Okay, because that's who I kept comparing him to, which is probably not fair.
Who has a cameo in this movie.
I did not catch it.
Okay. When they're in the boardroom, the guy who's talking, and then Ben comes in on like the webcam.
Yeah.
That's Brandon Kane.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's just cool to know.
He's the only, to my knowledge, he's the only actor from the miniseries who has a cameo in this.
And I know this isn't fair to Jay Ryan, but I was comparing him to this dude the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I think that he was a very strong performance in the miniseries.
Yeah, no,
and he had some of that wholesome stuff that like really made my heart tingle. Yeah, I know we gushed about it for a while, and I feel like all of that is lacking here.
No, I think Brandon Kane as Kid Ben in the miniseries was great, and then John Ritter as adult Ben was one of the best adult actors.
Yeah.
I don't think Jay Ryan is a bad actor.
I haven't seen him enough to make that call.
I don't think I've seen him in anything else. This is not Ben Hanscom. This is not Haystack. Like this, in terms of like the kid in the first movie to the adult in this movie, there's zero resemblance.
They don't look anything like each other.
They don't have like the same mannerisms or anything. A lot of the adults in this movie really try to emulate the mannerisms of the kids in the previous movie.
I think Stan did the best job.
That's one of my notes. But Ben's, there's none of that. And like you said, the chemistry with Beverly is not great.
I think it's non-existent. It almost just felt like your hair is winter fire,
and then her hair is literally on fire.
He's screaming it as he's being buried alive.
Yeah,
and then they reach out towards each other. I'm sorry. I thought that was goofy. I thought it was dumb.
It was so the whole thing where like he's being buried in the clubhouse
and she's drowning in blood.
It was too much, and I am like super romantic, super melodramatic guy. But the miniseries scene where they're outside the hospital and John Ritter says his super corny line and it takes 2 minutes to do is way more effective.
If you see it now, then you're not blind anymore.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
And just
because it's simple.
We're going to watch a little bit of Stan here just for a minute to see like the way this actor, Andy Bean, who plays adult Stan.
He's like, I have 5 minutes to encapsulate this role.
But he takes mannerisms from the kid and
he does a good job.
Yeah. So we're just going to watch this real quick. They even like do his hair the same way.
Even that little laugh. Oh my God.
Well, here, this is like the way he walks. Mm-hmm. Like where he like tight shoulders.
He gets all like frigid.
Yeah, like it's just how the kid walks in the first movie.
And there's zero of this for Ben.
No. I don't know like how much of that is like the actor making decisions
and how much is the direction.
Yeah, exactly, because like surely like Andy Muschietti would try to have all of the actors do this. Or maybe he didn't, and the actor, it was just based on the actor.
Again, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I don't think he's that good of a director. I think he did a pretty good job with the first It movie, but I don't think Mom is good. I don't think this is good.
I've only seen these 2 movies, so.
I think those are his only 3.
Yeah, I think so.
And he's getting great. The
Flash.
And
Attack on Titan.
And I'd be willing to bet any amount of money that the Flash is going to swing closer to It Chapter 2 and Mama.
Yeah. Okay, so
what else did we have on Ben?
That was it. I mean, the scare in the school. was not great.
Because this is my same problem with how like they didn't sell the Richie dirty little secret. Same thing here. What does Pennywise do? He screams the poem because screaming is scary.
I love that poem. I love it. They use it way too much in this movie.
100%.
Like, yes, it is iconic, but you can't just go shouting it every other scene. Like, you're totally taking away from it. Like, it's this small, like, intimate thing between Ben and Bev. Biv, that's their name.
Biv, yeah, that's the ship.
But when you have, like, Pennywise teasing them with it and screaming it, and they're both, like, screaming it at each other.
Giving them a real adult fear of rejection.
I don't like it.
I know fat kids are afraid they'll get rejected by the pretty girl.
Okay, so we already started on Stan, and I want to do this in 2 segments.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Stan, his phone call, just like that whole first bit of it before we get into the kind of epilogue of the movie.
Okay.
I mostly like his phone call. His suicide is not as effective as it is in the miniseries.
I don't think it's effective at all.
I think it is a little... it's not great, but I don't think it's terrible. But the phone call portion of it, like we just watched, I think is pretty good.
The actor did a good job. It's a very small role, and so he had to put a lot of his acting chops right into that little bit.
I think a lot of the issues in this, and you have a note that it's a lot of the scary parts and the dramatic parts are too overproduced, too much music, they don't use silence enough, and the suicide is part of that.
Got my note here, it lacks the punch of the mystery. And of course it does, because this whole movie lacks the mystery. So why does his suicide... I almost wouldn't have even had him commit suicide. I would have had him come back to Derry and die. Just to do something different.
Yeah, and actually, that was my prediction. The first movie, at the end, Bev has her psychic vision where she says, I see us all as adults coming back. And I was like, does that mean they're not going to kill Stan? Is Stan going to come to Derry?
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Because it would have at least been, we're trying to do something new with the source material, which I'm not always a fan of, but I at least try to be open to.
I probably would have bitched about them not killing Stan, but I mean, at least it would have been something.
I think part of my problem with Stan, not the actors, just the way they write them, has to do with the way they write the rest of the movie, and this includes the miniseries, is he's not the one that makes them cut their hands anymore in either one. It's Bill. And that's because they take out so much of the other stuff that I think that they should have adapted, including him realizing the future danger, and that's why he freaks out so much.
Yeah. Something that is... I don't even think we acknowledged this. In the book, Stan never verbally says anything to Bill. They leave the sewer, Stan finds the Coke bottle and breaks it. And Bill just naturally knows what Stan is wanting him to do, and then Bill does everything.
Because right then, Stan's an adult and he realizes the future danger. But at the same time, that's kind of what fucks him in the future.
Okay, before we get to the letter, Spider Stan is just a little too much.
It was too much. I think that the head by itself was fine. Even, like, its first joke it cracked. I'm like, if it would have ended there...
It goes on for so long.
But they were like, hey, have you guys seen the movie The Thing where the head crawls around?
I appreciated him coming out of the refrigerator with like the contortionist body.
Just like Pennywise before, yeah.
Yeah, it's a callback to Pennywise in It Chapter 1, and it's a callback to Stan's head in the refrigerator in the book and in the miniseries. So it's like a double thing there. But then the sequence
they crank everything up to 11.
Yeah, they really do. Neither of us are a fan of this, so why don't you just kick us off with Stan's letter?
Okay, I'm just going to read my note.
Go ahead.
I'm going to do some grammatical corrections because I never check myself here. Stan's suicide note is fucking stupid. Fucking stupid. Literally all the fucking characters were afraid and half tried to run away. United my ass. They trip and fell into a victory. A dumbass wrote this. I'll kill myself to unite you guys. The idea it might freak you guys out and make you bolt never crossed my mind. Also, please ignore that Bev said she saw us all dying horribly if we left. It's not a contradiction. I swear it's deep and fixes King's work.
Two big issues here is, one, it drops it on you like right at the end. So if this is something you don't like, this is literally the last thing you're thinking about as you're walking out the theater.
It's what you leave with, and you leave with a wet fart.
The other thing is the bigger issue is that Stan's suicide in the book, yes, King does explicitly say he kills himself because he's the only one she knows he's pregnant, but more than that, it's just this deeper, more ambiguous thing that incites more discussion than most of the rest of the book put together. There's so much to dive into there, and Stan is such a deep character, but like this movie puts such a fine point on it. No, he did it because
no, he was the 4D chess master that was going to unite them by fucking killing himself.
It's not good.
How did he have the foresight to write this letter? When did he write this letter? Because the movie implies he just goes right upstairs and kills himself.
But no, he went upstairs and wrote these letters. If you were Patty Uris, would you mail these letters? Because I wouldn't.
I would read the letters first.
Yeah, but what the fuck is this?
My husband was a crazy person. I am burning these.
Who is Pennywise? Like, what is this shit?
That's what I mean. A dumbass wrote this. Somebody who doesn't know anything about characterization, who doesn't know anything about how normal humans behave, how normal humans speak.
Gary Dauberman, the writer of The Nun and the doll movies, the Annabelle movies.
Those are very bad movies. So.
I haven't seen them, so I can't say anything.
Imagine this movie if it was made, if it was even worse.
Yes, granted though, I have no emotional attachment to the Annabelle stuff, so I probably would be less upset, but...
I was excited for The Nun for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Okay.
This contains the blood of Jesus Christ. I will throw it at the nun.
Bev Marsh, Jessica Chastain. I have no idea what your thoughts are, but I really like Jessica Chastain. I thought she was one of the better ones.
I think she was very good in this role. I just don't think she has any chemistry with the person she's supposed to have chemistry with.
Yes, I agree. But her on her own and with some of the other losers, I thought she was great.
I thought she had pretty good chemistry with Eddie. I thought she had pretty good chemistry with Bill, of all people, despite that weird little kiss.
Again, I'm totally biased to anybody who's involved with the X-Men franchise. She was in the last X-Men movie with James McAvoy's Professor X, so they've worked together. I'm going to be even... I'll tell you, not all of the X-Men movies are perfect, but...
They're not, but...
That's a franchise that I'm a defender of, and anybody who's involved with them is kind of like part of the family, so...
If we didn't get those X-Men movies, the MCU wouldn't exist as we know it.
True. Very true.
Same thing with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Everything leads to this.
Yep.
So...
I wonder how they're gonna... The way that they tied in Sam Raimi's movies and the Amazing Spider-Man movies, how they tied them into the MCU, I wonder how they're gonna do the same thing with the Fox X-Men movies.
I just want Wolverine versus the Hulk.
Yes.
That's all I want.
Yes. What makes me most excited about the X-Men coming into the MCU is you get to do, like, origins for all these iconic characters.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to introduce Wolverine? How are you going to introduce Magneto, Professor X, Storm, Kitty Pryde?
I would 100% just do Magneto as a World War II story, as his origin story.
Which, that was perfect.
Yeah.
So. Have you read Magneto Testament?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so great. We should do an episode on that.
I'll do it.
Yeah. Okay, what did you think about Beverly being psychic?
Okay. So, here's Daniel trying to be very nice to the movie. They're trying to create a reason why they can't run, because she's saying, no, if we run, we all just kill ourselves like Stan did. Only to contradict that later with the suicide note.
Yep.
Having that there be like an effect of the deadlights, like it does something to you. Okay, I can kind of, I can buy that. I think there's just too much else going on in this movie, and it contradicts itself too much for me to say it was good.
Maybe this is a good time to bring this up. So when I saw this movie initially, and with the subsequent rewatches, there are 3 things specifically that make me the most angry.
That check you out.
Yeah. One is just Mike Hamlin altogether.
Okay.
2 is Stan's letter and the reason for his suicide. And 3 is that it's explicitly stated in the movie that if they leave Derry, they will die. And it takes the decision out of their hands to stay and fight.
Yeah.
Because in the book, and in the miniseries, it's kind of implied that Pennywise might get them if they leave. Mm-hmm. But he even offers them the chance to leave, and he'll let them live or something. But they do have a choice. They can stay and fight for the good of Derry and the children of Derry, and in the name of Georgie and all the other kids who died, or they can leave. Mm-hmm. And maybe they will go on to live normal adult lives and not be killed by this clown. But in the book and in the miniseries, they decide, no, we got to take the Steve Rogers road. We got to do the right thing. We got to unite. We got to fight against this thing. In this film, that choice is completely taken away from them.
And then people still try to run.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
Bev flat out tells you, Richie, if you leave, you're going to kill yourself or you'll die horribly. Mm-hmm. And then they still try to do it.
Yeah. Which I just hate it.
And it also sort of, messes with, I saw us all coming back and we were older. Stan doesn't come back.
Nope. So my interpretation of that was that she was lying to him.
So he wouldn't kill himself then.
I guess. But I mean, think about it. If you were 13 and you had this vision that all of your friends reunite as adults to do this thing, but one of them wasn't there, are you going to be oh, no, you weren't there? Okay, so Bev has... so there's two there's the one with her dad and then one with Mrs. Kirsch. We'll talk about her dad first. It looks like we have differing opinions.
I thought it was dumb. I thought it was goofy as fuck.
I thought it was creepy. The whole perfume thing where he's spraying it on himself and spraying it on her.
I laughed, but I don't think it wanted me to laugh.
No. I think, well, obviously, in the book, Alvin Marsh is one of the scariest things. Mm-hmm. And you don't get a lot of that here. You only get a couple minutes with him in it. But I can definitely, see this dad who lost his wife, and he blames his daughter, but at the same time...
Sexualizes his daughter.
Sexualizes his daughter because she reminds him of his wife, and he has this, sensory experience with her perfume. It's fucked up.
I think it would have been a lot better if it wouldn't have, like I said, cranked to 11. You could have written this as a more subdued scene. This is your mother's perfume. Have you ever tried it? And spray it on her wrist, and then he just kind of smells it a little bit and goes... I really miss her.
Well, see, I actually think this is one of the scares that isn't cranked to 11, at least not like all the others. Maybe this one's cranked to 8, because he does all that, but then he doesn't, turn into some stupid giant
CGI monster.
Yeah, okay. He's still just Bev's dad.
Okay, I'll give you that. This one's cranked to 8.
Okay, so Mrs. Kirsch, prior to the giant naked scary witch monster.
So good.
Yeah, so good. So good they made it the trailer.
Perfect trailer fodder. Perfect scare. There's so much tension being built. Mm-hmm. And then we get a big goofy looking CGI monster that completely takes me out of the scene that it built.
So there's in that scene, there's 2 points where you see Mrs. Kirsch in the distance, kind of jubilant,
yeah,
do a Slender Man across the hallway. Slender Man across the hallway.
We both had seizures right there.
The second time she's naked, I thought it would have been so much cooler if she just came out naked and just ran at Bev.
You know what I would have done? Similar. If I could have found a contortionist that age, have her do a ring or grudge walk towards her, all naked and bending her body as much as the old body will let her.
Might be a little hard to find a contortionist that age, but yeah, that would have been freaky for sure.
Yeah. Or you can work some movie magic, have her crawl up the ceiling. But the big goofy CGI, which I don't think it looks good.
No.
I don't even think it looks good for the time. It looks worse now.
And it will continue to look worse as time goes on.
Yeah.
And again, walking back a little bit on Eddie, the leper in the first movie, there was a lot of practical effects there. And then I can't say for certain that it's all CGI in this movie,
They overlay it with a lot more CGI.
which is gonna just look bad.
I think the body itself was CGI'd over. I'm pretty sure they did like the makeup on a dude, and he was probably wearing like a green suit.
Yeah. I hate that because there was a good mix of practical and CGI in the first one.
And then they did way more CGI in this one.
Yeah, there are some practical effects, but not nearly as many as in the first one.
I do think that Bev talking to Pennywise in this scene, it's almost good.
Yeah.
It's close to being good, but we'll probably get to that when we get a little further down.
Bev, mostly good, but with some not good.
Yeah.
Henry Bowers, played by Teach Grant. I kind of like that first scene, but you didn't, so tell me why.
Because I work in a mental health hospital, and that's not how any patient I have ever had acts.
Okay, I have not worked in a mental health hospital, so that's probably fair.
I mean, as a person who's never had to deal with someone who's mentally ill trying to write a crazy person,
Yeah.
and do you occasionally get somebody like get overly excited and maybe jump up and down? But this was like a monkey grabbing the windows. This was very, I don't know, straight jackety.
Yeah, so I will admit my closest experience to all that is movies.
And I've worked in a mental health hospital for 5.5 years now,
So it definitely makes sense that this scene worked for me, didn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite part of it was actually like not him like jumping up on the window bars, but was when the nurse is taking him down the hallway and he's looking through the windows from each room they pass, looking to see if the balloon is still following them.
Okay, that's fine. Because I've also had to escort people. That's like 90% of my job is escorting people. And, they get distracted. He very clearly wants to see that one thing. And then he gets to his room and he can't see it out the window anymore. And then it's under his bed. I thought that was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was cool as well. Okay, so they change the zombie bully guy instead of being Victor Belch, it's now Patrick Hockstetter,
Because he's the one who died. He was the one that was given the scene in the last movie.
and because the second half of that last movie they just completely forget that Belch and Victor are characters, unfortunately. But I mean, yeah,
It is what it is. That's where we are.
and we did mention earlier that we do get more scenes with Kid Bowers, which I really like. I love the scene where he comes up to his house and the cops are there and they arrest him. That was great.
He's got a lot of balls.
Yeah, you're gonna kill them all, kill them all, kill them all. The scene in the arcade was unnerving. That, well, what's going on here? You're trying to hit on my little cousin, and it's like how that kid like turns on Richie like so quick. Oh,
And that's part of what like took me out of like the, I guess, gay Richie for me, was he didn't even do anything like explicitly flirty. He's just like, hey, do you want to play again?
yeah, no, I agree there. It did not take me out of it, but I mean, I have had experience with this is like that in middle school where like somebody is talking to me friendly, and then a third person enters the situation,
And then they're mean to you.
yeah, no, I've had that experience personally, so it didn't take me out of it. Before we get to Richie, they flip Eddie. He attacks Eddie first and then goes to Mike, which is a flip from everything else. I was excited when that happened in the theater because what I thought was going to happen was that meant that Mike was going to be the one that kills Henry, which I thought would have worked for me.
Yeah, that would have been fine. I would have been fine with that.
Instead, Richie kills him, and it turns into like this comedy moment. Are you okay, Richie? No, I just fucking killed a guy.
He attacks him with the Native American tomahawk.
Okay, so all right, let's rewind. Let's talk about Eddie and Henry. What do you think of that scene?
There are parts of it that I find like genuinely funny, like when he first gets stabbed through the cheek and he just backs up and
Why'd you do that? You just stabbed me in the fucking cheek.
and he just hides behind the shower just to stab him. I was like, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then they then there's that mullet comment, and I'm like, the audio sounds weird to me. It sounds like it was added later.
It may have been dubbed in, and
And I feel like it would have been hard for him to talk with a big gaping hole in his mouth.
I also feel like if I just thought I murdered somebody, granted in self-defense, but still, like, took a
Yeah, but
life,
you still killed somebody.
I would not be thinking about quippy lines.
Yeah. It felt very... Again, it felt like this scene isn't scary, so now we have to make it funny.
And then Bowers survives, makes it to the library to attack Mike. I'm on board. Like, this is cool. He's going to fight Mike. We get that scene from the book, and Mike's going to be the one to kill him, which, like, is poetic. I like that. And then, boom, tomahawk to the back of the head, and Richie's like, what the fuck, man? I just killed this guy. I killed Henry Bowers. And it's just like, I feel like because, what's his face? Bill Hader is probably like the bigger name in this. They kind of are interjecting Richie into some scenes where he probably shouldn't have been. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It didn't super work for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I thought all the scenes with Henry as a kid were much better.
Yeah.
And
that the kid actor really sells a lot of that anger.
Did you notice that they changed his dad's name from Butch to Oscar?
No.
And so I went back and looked. In the first movie, they never say his name. And in the credits, he's Mr. Bowers. And they specifically call him Oscar Bowers in this movie.
I guess it's whatever. I don't know.
It is whatever because it doesn't really matter. But then it also makes me mad because...
It's one of those things like, why change it?
Why change it? Exactly.
It literally... This isn't like Richie being gay, where like you can add to like the homophobic subtext of the book, mm-hmm. or add diversity. This is literally just
we changed his name because we did.
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay,
maybe he really hates people named Oscar.
Maybe. Last character, Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård. Overall, there are some specific scenes where choices were made, where better choices could have been made. Overall, like the performance.
Yeah, I overall like the performance. I think that the script and the directing does that performance dirty a lot of the time. So, I feel like it kind of confuses the audience because it kind of gives him like two origin stories in this movie. The Carney,
mm-hmm.
and the and
Robert Gray.
And then just the lights falling from the sky.
Which makes sense to me because I've read the book and I understand what they're trying to say, but I feel like if I haven't read the book and I'm just watching this movie, like, you could almost see that as like two different origin stories.
I almost feel that when you're cutting out so much of the cosmological shit, that just implying that he was some dude who learned to shapeshift or something might have been better.
Like in Woe, where he's a guy who gets dumped and dies and then he comes back as a ghost.
Maybe not that bad, but yeah, I almost feel that if you're going to half-ass it, I would have said just don't imply an origin at all if you're skimming over that stuff,
or at least pick a lane.
Yeah, or pick a lane. Instead, it's kind of they kind of go, oh, maybe. And like some of the early trailers were showing that off, and people were speculating. Like there were so many YouTube videos changing Pennywise origins, you know.
Yeah. I didn't watch any of those.
I watched every single one.
So the ritual, I kind of like and I kind of don't like what they do with the ritual of Chud.
It works on paper.
Yeah, God, that's the theme. If
that should be the name of this review. Works on paper,
not an execution. The tokens are cute. I like. It makes sense that the indigenous people of that area would have combat Pennywise at some point.
Would have tried.
Yeah. So it makes sense that Mike would research that, find a way, and then maybe that be their thing.
And instead he scratches out the fact that they failed.
Because, no, guys, they didn't believe hard enough. They didn't save Tinkerbell.
And everyone else is going, we cut the theme of belief in the first movie. Mike, you can't use it now.
Yeah, and it just ends up being super awkward.
There's a way to salvage that scene, and it's so obvious that I feel dumb saying it. Have the ritual interrupted.
Yeah.
Like,
have it not go through.
Yeah, like the deadlights are its true form, but it still has a physical presence.
Mm-hmm.
So it interrupts them, because why wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It kind of starts going downhill when it gets to the part where Beverly's telling them that if they leave, they die.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the Adrian Mellon scene.
It's such a strong opening.
For the most part, I think all the phone calls are pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the reunion is fine. But then it kind of after that with Bill and Mike and then some of the walkabout scenes, it kind of starts to get downhill. But where I really fall off and check out is the house on Nebolt and then them going down into the sewers. And I think for me, my main issue is that all of that is just way too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, there's a way to cut all of that and make it more palatable. So they go into the house in Nebolt. They have like this grudge match fight with Stan the Spider, whatever. Then they go down the well and they're in the sewer. They go to Pennywise's lair. They do the ritual. The ritual fails. Pennywise comes out as the spider and reveals that Mike was lying, that the ritual never worked. And then this is where it gets bad for me, is he scares them off and they all go scattering into their own different parts. And they all have like their own like mini scenes, like Bill's in the basement with Georgie. Bev and Ben have that terrible reaching for each other part. Richie and Eddie have that whole bit with the 3 doors from the first movie.
Next time we just go with normal scary.
Yeah. And not that... I feel like if you just cut all of that, because that's like 15 minutes worth of stuff, and just go straight from he's a spider, he chases them around the chamber for a while, and then Eddie dies, and he says there's more than one way to make him feel small, and then Mike starts it, and then go from there. Like, to me, that's way more palatable. Yeah. I mean, I would still have issues with that, but it would shorten the whole thing by almost 20 minutes. Or you could put that 20 minutes in earlier parts of the movie to help build the characters more, or just make it shorter altogether.
I would have definitely cut or shortened the Stan Spider.
That too.
Part of the problem with that is they separate the losers, and there's 2 separate scares. They're getting attacked 2-pronged, like one in the mirror and one in the...
Oh yeah, I forgot about the mirror part.
I would have... You choose one. I would have chose the mirror because it's way shorter, it's way simpler.
Yeah.
I would have cut Bev being dragged underwater.
Yeah.
Because it's like all of a sudden they went from Richie is the most afraid trying to run away to Eddie is the most afraid.
Yeah. That whole last 40 minutes just needed like another pass at the editor's desk.
Yeah. Well, what are we on now?
So what about we talked about the ritual. What about the spider itself?
The fucking spider. I saw that spider and I almost walked out of the theater. I was like, there's no fucking way. Like, all the hype and all the, we're going to talk shit about the ending, a whole bunch, and then this is what you fucking give us.
At least the other one was practical.
At least it was practical. Does he appear as Pennywise a lot? Yes. But that's not his true form. That's the whole point. They even kind of show, like, in the Indian ritual, like, a big spider-looking thing, and I was like, I thought, okay, maybe we'll get something like that.
Sidebar: I liked those animated portions.
Yeah,
those were cool.
And instead you get, like, because we have to have Bill Skarsgård saying one-liners and doing goofy shit, or the audience and people are afraid of the clown, so we have to have more of the clown.
Yeah.
That feels... I don't know if that was the director's choice or if the studio went, no, the clown. Do the clown. It could have been anything.
Yeah.
The point is, it doesn't work. It's not scary. It looks stupid. And now I'm coming to my YouTube comment war, where I mentioned that I didn't want to hear anyone talking about the spider in the miniseries again because the clown spider was so stupid. And a person goes, the clown spider was in the book.
Nope.
And I was like, no, it's not. Yeah, no, it's a part clown, part spider. And I'm like, no, it's a giant pregnant spider. And they kept insisting, and I got so mad. I might have been being trolled, but I pulled out my copy of the book and started typing the lines.
I hope they were trolling. Yeah, no, it's not great.
And this is, again, why could we not just have a giant female spider as the big reveal? I think it would have... I don't know. It's right there on you for paper. The reason why everyone should be so afraid is because this shit's gonna spread.
The only thing I liked about any of this last part was where they pull out his heart and they all together, like...
They all crush it together?
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
That's fine. Him looking like a deflated nutsack.
So...
It's goofy.
It's worth it for the memes.
Me? No, my heart.
Look at you and all that you have accomplished.
I'm the eater of worlds. You're tiny. You got a small dick and you come fast.
You ejaculate prematurely.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's the whole ending sequence.
By that point, all 3 times I've watched this, I'm just so checked out.
Yeah, by then, like, you don't even... I checked back in just long enough to get mad at the suicide notes, because I'd completely forgotten about it.
I was a little checked back in, because I like the scene where they look in the glass, and Eddie and
they're all there.
Stan are there, like, oh, that's nice. And then you get the letter, and you're like, fuck. One other thing they changed is the adults don't forget after Pennywise was dead. Different from the book. I think thematically it doesn't work as well, but it's kind of nice for me because, like, that is almost one of the saddest parts of the book.
At least Richie remembers Eddie.
Yeah.
Which I believe I said when we reviewed the book that Eddie gets, like, one of the rawest deals.
He does.
Because he dies down there, and then everybody forgets to exist him.
Yeah, and his body's just down there rotting.
Yeah.
Along with Patrick Hockstedter's.
So... I think that them forgetting is better, especially in that, like, Lovecraftian, it died and it takes everything, including the town, in the memory of itself with it.
Thematically, they should forget. It works better if they do forget, but it's just so fucking sad.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a sad story.
Yeah. It's you could even add some bittersweetness to it, like I don't know. I maybe write it so only Richie remember.
I'll kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
We're almost 2 hours in, and we're just getting out of characters.
Oh my god.
Let's keep going. Scary shit. So first, we'll talk about what was scary, and then we'll talk about what was not. We've already touched on a lot of this. Kind of one of my main issues with this movie is it's just mostly not scary.
Like at all.
Yeah. To me, like, the scariest parts were the Adrian Mellon scene.
Very good. Such a strong opening. I was like, when I first was in the theater, I was like, I'm there. I'm in. I'm ready.
And the girl under the bleachers. Those were the 2 things that the only 2 things that really, like, kind of scared me. And then for me, I thought Bev's dad was effective, and the skateboard kid scene was effective, but maybe not as scary.
Yeah. I'm there. Yeah.
Well, was there anything for you other than those scenes that was even
remote? Nope.
No. And you didn't even think the Bev's dad was scary, so for you it was really just the 3 scenes.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about why this isn't scary. Like, too much comedy, or comedy that isn't funny, or
loud jump scares,
music when there shouldn't be music, or just too much music, like it's very overproduced. There's lots of generic horror movie crap, CGI that maybe looks bad now, or maybe even looked bad at the time. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about the whole, like, monsters versus abstract fears, and I don't know, like, I feel like we've touched on most of this.
Mm-hmm. I think we've just touched on a lot of this naturally.
What we didn't talk about was the fortune cookie scene.
So I believe that the scene they were trying to make more scary by having it be super intense. Mm-hmm. But it literally just devolved to them having close-ups on all of them, screaming curse words, because screaming is scary.
Yeah. It led to one of the only parts I thought was genuinely funny in the whole movie, which is where Mike is bashing the chair on the table and the waitress walks in.
But is that what her reaction should be?
No, it should be like, you're going to pay for that chair and the table. Dishes.
I am calling police. They all get arrested. Pennywise kills them in county jail.
Yeah. The only The only thing that kind of took me by surprise, I thought was kind of cool in this scene, was the floating heads in the aquarium.
Yeah.
I don't even think I noticed that on the first watch.
I liked the crawling guy shout out.
Oh yeah, I have that under Easter eggs. But the chick, just, it doesn't look anywhere near as good or as scary as the one in the miniseries.
And I'm also like, I think it would be more terrifying that if I was seeing all that and I had to pretend like things were normal for people who couldn't see it.
Rather than running around and screaming. And
a bunch of curse words like, or a bunch of crazy people on LSD.
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me of something from a Sam Raimi movie, only not made as well.
Sure.
That's it. That's how they escaped this time.
Okay, so we're moving on. So we've always had like an Easter egg segment, but it's never had a name. I'm officially going to, unless you protest, I'm going to call the Easter egg segment Zombie Day.
I like that. That's good.
That's what I call Easter. Okay, so you mentioned the Stephen King cameo, if you want to talk about that.
I thought it was a very good... It's one of his better cameos. Because he gets to do a little bit, but it doesn't drag on so long that you notice that he's not really an actor. He just kind of acts like a dude, that's his range, is acting like a guy.
No, I agree. I liked it. I was a fan.
And I thought the joke right afterwards was the one joke where I went, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
She could beat the devil. You cut to him falling off the bike, and it's all rusted and not working.
That was good.
Yeah.
So more Easter eggs. Jason Fuchs or Jason Fox, or the guy he's a producer and maybe a writer. He cameos in the movie as Richie's manager, the guy who's like, "Well, you were fine 5 minutes ago. What are you doing? Get this guy." And then we mentioned Brandon Crane in Ben's introduction scene, the guy who played Kid Ben in the miniseries. Mm-hmm. So if you look on the walls in Henry's room in the hospital, he has a bunch of drawings of the man in the moon.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is pretty scary.
I didn't notice that.
The crawling eye you mentioned is a shout out to Richie's monster in the book. Mm-hmm. The girl with the birthmark, Ryan Kiera Armstrong, she's Charlie in the new Firestarter movie. We mentioned this. Molly Atkinson plays both Myra and Sonia Kasprack, which I just love. Is great. Mm-hmm. When Bill is riding Silver, after he gets a hold of it and he's like going to the library, he drives past a mural of the Bradley gang murders.
Oh, that's cool. See, now that I'll look for.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And in the funhouse, when Bill's going through like all the clown kind of like punching things, they
look like Tim Curry's.
Yeah. Okay, so King and the Koontz. We're finally here. Brian is backing over Dean Koontz.
Oh my God, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
My King is the Adrian Mellon scene.
My King is also the Adrian Mellon scene.
I think it's hands down the best scene in the movie.
It's a great intro, and it tricks you into thinking the rest of the movie is going to be of that caliber.
I kind of went into this movie with low expectations, and then I saw that scene, and I was like, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I was so wrong. And then my Koontz, like I said earlier, I had three things that have always just made me the maddest. Is Mike, Stan's suicide, and the fact that the decision to stay is taken away from them. But after all of that, watching it 3 times and really thinking about it, I think Mike Koontz actually has to be the structure in choosing to separate the kids and the adults into 2 different movies, because of what I've said at the beginning of the episode, where the kind of the fatal flaw is even with all the issues that both of these movies have, the second one doesn't have the chemistry of the kids to fall back on to make it entertaining. So that's my Koontz, is the choice to structure them separately.
My Koontz is the suicide note. Mostly because it's the last thing I was left with. Yeah. And it colors so much more of the rest of the movie, and it contradicts so much. Yeah. It almost I feel like a lot of things were added into this movie to go, no, we got to make it happier because King's... And my Koontz is them continuously talking down to the ending of Stephen King's works and then doing this. That's my Koontz.
Your endings are so bad. Nobody likes your ending. Blah, 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 blah.
And then doing this, completely missing all the thematic points of Stephen King's ending.
It was bad.
So, yeah, that's my Koontz.
Now, we finally get to rank this bad boy, and you are going first. I have your list in front of you. As I said, I'm not going to read out the entire lists anymore, but this is your list.
Chapter 2 is right above Phantoms.
So, it's second from the bottom.
I wanted to put it below Phantoms. The one reason I would put it below Phantoms is because Phantoms is bad, but it's inoffensive.
Yeah.
I find this work to be offensive. But there are some technically good things, and there are some... there's high highs.
There are redeemable things in this movie that make it worth watching. What reason would you ever give anybody to watch Phantoms?
To get drunk with them and trick them into it.
Yeah.
To make fun of Kevin Smith. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so you have it second from the bottom, above Phantoms, and below Firestarter 2020. Mm-hmm. Any particular reason why Firestarter was better for you than It Chapter 2?
It pissed me off significantly less. That's pretty much it. I think that it was also Firestarter, I think, is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. But the stuff that it, again, the stuff that it does wrong doesn't offend me the way that It Chapter 2 offends me as a fan of the work.
Gotcha. So we have it pretty close. I'm putting mine third from the bottom over Phantoms and X and just below Firestarter. Again, like if listen to our bonus episode on X, you and I were just kind of on separate ends of the spectrum on that movie. But for me, basically the exact same thing you said. So I have it third from the bottom, and you have it second from the bottom on your list.
Yeah.
So still nothing worse than Phantoms.
We'll get there eventually. This almost had it, Phantoms. You had a shot.
Okay. So we're moving on to homework, where we have two pieces of homework tonight.
Yes, I can pull up my list.
While you do that, I'll go ahead and give my 5 compliments.
Okay.
The Adrian Mellon scene, the Bleacher scene, Andy Bean as adult Stan, and the way he just replicates the mannerisms of the kid. Naked Mrs. Kirsch wiggling back and forth across the hallways in the background of that scene. Mm-hmm. In Mike's attic. I would live in Mike's attic. I love it.
Okay, so ours are close. We diverged a little bit. My first one is the strong opening, the Adrian Mellon scene.
Yep.
I think that is a opening scene to a far better version of this movie.
It was both of our king.
The Stephen King cameo in the joke after, because it's the one joke that's actually funny, kind of lands.
That could have been in mine too.
Then I have the maze of mirrors and using the same kid for Skateboard Kid throughout the movie, because that's just a little bit of like understanding of writing and foresight.
That kid survived all of those dinosaurs in Jurassic World. And then he gets killed by a clown.
Then the Bleacher scene.
Yep.
Because it's a jump scare that actually works. You know, it builds the tension and it lets you freeze for a minute and then it gets you.
It also teases you, like, this girl is smarter than your average horror movie character. She's like, no, I'm not going to talk to you. And
you're scary.
Yeah, and then, like, but no, then he tricks her. Like,
And then the Richie Deadlight scene, because I always forget it happens and it catches me off guard.
Same, just the way he just changes to, like,
dubsteps him, like,
I know.
all of a sudden. That got me.
Was that 5?
Yes.
Okay. So Losers Club Dreamcast as adults. We'll go through these together. We'll do it character by character. Who is your Bill?
Jake Gyllenhaal.
I could see it.
Yeah.
Mine is Eddie Redmayne, who he is the main character in the Fantastic Beasts movies. Who I know you haven't seen those, but I think you would agree with me once you eventually see those movies.
Okay.
How about Ben?
Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander in The Boys.
I have not seen The Boys. I don't know this actor.
He plays an evil Superman, and he kind of plays him as like a super smarmy smartass, but he has a decent amount of range as an actor. Mm-hmm. And if you ever want to like put an end to the Superman Clark Kent people would recognize him argument, look at a picture of Homelander and how he dresses every day. They don't look anything alike.
Okay.
I think he kind of looks like what a more fit version of the Kid would have also been. So
yeah. For Ben, I had Jason Segel.
Who's that?
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Okay, I'm there.
Yep, I like that. Okay, Beverly.
Margot Robbie.
Harley Quinn.
Yes.
You know, I've never seen her in anything else, so it's hard for me to like get an idea of her range.
Oh, I would have just had her play Harley Quinn.
You want to see me walk out of a movie? That's how you get me to walk out of a movie.
She'll call the clown Mr. J the whole time.
Nope, done. Absolutely done. I had Amy Adams.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Stanley, Stan the Man, Stan Urine.
Adam Driver.
Yeah, I can see that. Mine is similar. Sebastian Stan.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Mikey.
Idris Elba, and I'd have him be super British the whole time.
I had Idris Elba, and then I changed it.
Yeah, what did you change it to?
I'm sure I'm going to say this gentleman's name incorrectly.
Okay.
Chiwetel Ejiofor. He is the guy from the first Doctor Strange movie.
Oh, okay.
Moldo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he would be good. Eddie.
Michael Cera. Or Michael Cera.
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim.
Yes.
I could see that.
Yeah, he's my Eddie.
Yeah, I could see that. I had Martin Freeman.
Okay.
Richie.
Seth Green.
I had Seth Green and I changed it.
What did you change it to?
I changed it because if you remember, my kid Richie was the kid from Temple of Doom.
You just had him.
So I was like, well, I have to have an Asian American, or I have to have an Asian actor. So I chose Randall Park.
No, you should just made him white.
No.
Just never explain it.
No. Randall Park is my Richie.
Did you do a Henry?
I did do a Henry. Who's yours?
Jared Leto.
Ew, no.
And I would just have him act like Jared Leto the whole time.
Michael Fassbender.
Okay.
Circa Prometheus, X-Men, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay, and I did a Pennywise. Did you do a Pennywise?
I didn't do a Pennywise.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Okay, I'm changing my Pennywise to Jared Leto.
Gross.
No, wait, no. I got a good Pennywise. Ezra Miller, and just have him show up on set and act like Ezra Miller the whole time.
No, we tried that with Trash Can Man, and it didn't work.
Balloon for you. We all float.
No. Is he officially, like, done? Is it?
No. WB refuses to make a comment about him.
I understand that it's awkward, but you gotta say
despite the fact that we're up to like 15 some allegations against him.
And it's not just the Flash. He's also in the Fantastic Beasts movies, which there's supposed to be 2 more of.
Yeah. Now I will say that these are all alleged charges.
I know, but that's a lot of allegations.
But at the same time, you should at least part ways until they're either cleared.
I mean,
because right now it just looks like they're complicit.
They've done... Other production companies have done more for less allegations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We don't need to get into that.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. So our question for the listeners, please reach out to us on our socials, which you will hear at the end of the episode. Would you play Truth or Dare with Pennywise?
Yes.
And if so, would you choose Truth or Dare?
Dare.
Ooh. Okay, so this is our penultimate episode on It. We are going to be dropping one more bonus episode, kind of a compare and contrast of Stephen King's It versus Dean Koontz's Phantoms.
I need to do some notes for that this weekend.
Yes, that will be dropping soon. That will be our last episode on It until the Welcome to Derry series comes out, or we get get our hands on the documentary, or something else happens.
Maybe if we cover Floating Dragon next year and do another compare and contrast.
Yeah, I'm totally down for that. Or if we do the Dan Simmons book, The Summer of something.
Summer of Night, I don't know.
I think it is Summer of Night. Coming up on the Horror of Babylon, first I do want to mention our pal Hef is doing a Let's Play of Amnesia: The Dark Descent on our YouTube channel. Episodes of that are dropping every Wednesday at noon. There are going to be 9 episodes. Definitely go subscribe to our YouTube channel and check that out. I have watched all 9 of them, and they are super entertaining. Definitely worth a watch.
I've been listening to them while I play video games.
Yeah,
so.
it's fun. Yes.
Indeed.
And then we also started planning our season 2. We picked out the first 3-ish books that we're going to do. None of them are Stephen King, but we will return to Stephen King later in the year. We need a break from Steve.
Small one.
Yeah. But anyways, thank you very much for everybody for listening, and thank you very much, Daniel, for covering this with me.
Oh, of course. I love it.
And stay tuned for our socials, and stay scary, everybody.
Stay scary, everyone.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. And finally, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, and the iHeartRadio app. Stay scary.